My friends, the secret to riches is not found in effort, in struggle, or in endless action. It is found in the stillness of your own being. The lottery, that symbol of chance, is not won by numbers, but by consciousness. For nothing enters your experience unless it first arises within your imagination. When you hear the word lottery, what do you feel? Do you sense distance, luck, and impossibility? Or can you close your eyes and hear, truly hear, the sound of congratulations, the voice of a friend saying, "I'm so happy for you"? That listening, that inner acceptance, is the only action required. The world is but an echo of your inner assumptions. If you assume poverty, life reflects it back to you. But when you assume wealth, even silently, inwardly, it must take form. Listen, therefore, not to the chatter of doubt, but to the music of fulfillment. Night after night, fall asleep hearing the announcement of your win, the laughter of joy, the relief of abundance. Let those inner sounds saturate your being until they become more real to you than the numbers on a ticket. For creation is finished. The wealth you seek already exists. Your task is not to make it, but to receive it by listening. Assume the feeling of wealth, and the bridge of incidents will appear to bring it into your hands. So tonight, do not ask how it will come. Do not strive, simply listen. Listen as though it were already done. For when you listen to the fulfilled desire, you have already won. Imagination creates reality, because every event in life begins first as a thought, a picture, or a feeling within. What you vividly imagine with conviction impresses the subconscious mind, and the subconscious faithfully expresses it in the outer world. To imagine is to give form to the unseen, to plant the seed of experience before it takes root in time. The world you see around you is nothing more than the shadow of past imaginal acts. By deliberately assuming and sustaining a desired state in imagination, you reshape circumstances, people, and events to mirror the inner vision you hold. Winning requires inner listening, not outer effort, because the true cause of success lies in consciousness rather than struggle. Most people labor endlessly, believing effort alone will open the door to abundance. Yet they overlook the silent power that directs all action, the imaginal act. Inner listening means tuning your attention to the voice of fulfillment, hearing within the tones of victory, the laughter of joy, the words of congratulations that already exist in the unseen. When you listen inwardly, you align yourself with the state of the wish fulfilled, and that alignment draws the outer world into harmony with your inner conviction. Outer effort without this inner alignment produces frustration, for action taken from doubt or fear only multiplies the very state you wish to escape. True listening is quiet acceptance, allowing the mind to be saturated with the end result until it feels natural, until it becomes the only reality you acknowledge. This kind of listening bypasses resistance because it does not argue with appearances, but affirms what is already true in imagination. Winning is not a matter of doing more, but of hearing more deeply until the inner sound of success becomes the only song you know. Hear congratulations as though they already happened, for in that imaginal hearing lies the secret of fulfillment. When you close your eyes and allow yourself to dwell on the sound of another's voice joyfully declaring your success, you impress upon the subconscious a reality that must externalize. The mind does not distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is physically heard. It simply accepts the feeling that accompanies the impression. By listening inwardly to the applause, the laughter, the heartfelt words of friends and family who celebrate your achievement, you are rehearsing the future into the present. This practice is not mere daydreaming, but the deliberate act of assuming the wish fulfilled. It requires persistence, for the outer world may contradict the inner vision. Yet, if you continue to hear with faith, the world will reorganize itself to reflect what you have accepted as true. Each congratulation you hear within plants a seed, and repeated nightly, it grows until it breaks through the surface of your waking world. To hear congratulations inwardly is to occupy the state of the fulfilled desire. It is to live in the end, not in hope or longing, but in certainty. In that certainty, circumstances bend, people align, and events unfold to mirror what was first heard in the silence of imagination. The sound of victory must be felt as real, more convincing than doubt, stronger than appearances. By saturating yourself with these inner echoes, you give life to the unseen and allow the finished reality to reveal itself in time. Congratulations, already spoken in imagination become the bridge through which the outer world delivers the very outcome you have claimed. The world echoes inner assumptions, for life is nothing more than a mirror faithfully reflecting what one believes to be true of oneself and of others. Every circumstance, every relationship, every opportunity, and even every challenge is an outpicturing of an unseen assumption carried within the depths of consciousness. You may think the world acts independently, but it is always showing you what you have impressed upon your subconscious mind. If you assume rejection, you will encounter situations that confirm rejection. If you assume favor, doors will open effortlessly. The outer world has no choice but to organize itself around the tones of your inner convictions. Most people wrestle with the shadows on the wall, trying to change conditions while leaving untouched the assumptions that gave birth to them. Yet until the root is shifted inwardly, the reflection remains the same. To transform the world, you must first transform the state from which you view it. Assumptions are silent creators. They work whether you are aware of them or not. By dwelling on a certain idea of yourself, wealthy or poor, loved or unloved, strong or weak, you decree the experiences that must follow. The world cannot resist but echo back the identity you have claimed. This truth reveals the futility of struggle. Effort directed outward is temporary at best, for it does not alter the cause. But the moment you dare to assume a higher state and persist in it, the world bends to mirror it. Life does not argue with you, it simply yields. Even the delays, the detours, the unexpected turns are all part of the unfolding of that inner conviction. The law is impersonal, exact, and unfailing. Therefore, if you desire change, you must take your attention away from appearances and place it firmly on the inner assumption of your choice. Assume success, and the world must echo success. Assume health, and the body reorganizes itself accordingly. Assume love, and you will hear its reflection in every encounter. The world is your looking glass, and what you behold is none other than yourself pushed out, the visible evidence of the invisible states you have dared to occupy. Poverty and wealth both arise from belief, for nothing enters your life apart from what you inwardly consent to be true. The mind is the workshop in which every condition of life is fashioned, and belief is the tool that shapes the substance of reality. When one believes in limitation, lack, and struggle, life conforms to that pattern and presents experiences that echo scarcity. When one believes in abundance, opportunity, and ease, those very qualities flow into expression with equal certainty. The difference between a rich man and a poor man lies not in external possessions, but in the unseen assumptions they carry within. Belief is not mere idle thought or fleeting wish, it is the deep conviction accepted by the subconscious mind as fact. The subconscious, impartial and creative, does not argue with the truth or falsehood of what you impress upon it. It simply accepts and projects it into form. If you constantly affirm lack through worry, fear, or resignation, your subconscious reflects it outward as conditions of poverty. If, however, you dwell upon the inner certainty of wealth, feel its presence, and believe yourself to already possess it, the subconscious organizes circumstances to bring that state into visible reality. Poverty endures not because opportunities are absent, but because the inner vision remains small and bound by disbelief. Wealth manifests not because fortune smiles on a chosen few, but because the wealthy in mind assume themselves to be wealthy, in fact, long before evidence supports them. The external world is but the shadow of belief. It cannot resist the conviction of the inner state. Even chance, luck, and opportunity are only names given to the outworking of belief. To break free from poverty, one must not struggle outwardly, but shift inwardly. This does not mean ignoring present circumstances, but refusing to give them final authority. By daily assuming the feeling of wealth, by inwardly hearing words of financial freedom, by seeing oneself living with ease, the belief in abundance grows stronger. Repetition of this assumption saturates the subconscious until it becomes natural, and what is natural inwardly must appear outwardly. Wealth is not a matter of accumulation but of consciousness. One may hold millions and still feel poor, fearing loss and limitation, and in time such fear draws the very loss imagined. Another may hold little yet inwardly assume plenty, and life bends itself to supply without strain. It is the belief, not the bank account, that determines the experience. Poverty and wealth are states of mind clothed by belief, and as long as one holds to them inwardly, the outer world has no choice but to echo them. To change the story of life, belief must be shifted, for belief alone is the author of fortune, and the silent cause behind every condition experienced. Listen nightly to sounds of fulfillment, for in that sacred act lies the doorway to creation. Every night as the body surrenders to rest, and the mind drifts between waking and sleeping, the subconscious stands open and receptive, ready to be impressed with whatever feeling you allow to dominate. In this state of quiet surrender, you possess the greatest power to reshape your destiny. The sounds you choose to hear inwardly at this moment determine the experiences you meet when morning comes. To listen nightly is to practice the art of assumption with discipline. Instead of rehearsing the failures of the day or worrying about tomorrow, you deliberately close your eyes and hear only what you desire to hear, as though it were already true. If you long for success, hear the voice of a loved one congratulating you. If you desire wealth, listen to the tone of relief in your own inner speech as you speak of financial freedom. If you seek love, hear the warmth of affection in another's voice calling your name tenderly. These imaginal sounds, repeated nightly, sink deep into the subconscious, and once impressed, they must express themselves in the fabric of your daily life. The subconscious does not distinguish between fact and imagination. It accepts only the feeling carried by the impression. To hear congratulations inwardly with the emotion of joy is to convince the subconscious that it is already so, and the subconscious, ever faithful, moves heaven and earth to manifest that inner reality outwardly. Night after night, as you persist in this inner hearing, the outer world begins to shift, aligning itself with the new tones you have embraced. What once seemed distant gradually appears natural, until life itself echoes the sounds you have rehearsed in silence. Listening nightly also trains the mind to dwell in the end rather than in the process. Many exhaust themselves wondering how a desire will come to pass, attempting to force circumstances into shape. But imagination requires no effort, only surrender. When you hear the sounds of fulfillment, you place yourself beyond the question of how. You rest in the certainty that the end is already accomplished, and this state of assurance creates the bridge of incidents by which the desire must be realized. Persistence is key, for the world may initially contradict your inner hearing. Appearances may speak loudly of lack, rejection, or failure, but you must turn away from those voices and return to the inner sound of completion. Night after night, let the same scene play out until it feels more natural than the evidence of the senses. The more vivid and consistent your inner hearing, the sooner the world reshapes itself to reflect it. This practice is not confined to special desires alone, but can be applied to every area of life. You may listen to the sounds of health in your body, the laughter of family in harmony, the applause of recognition in your work, or the peace of silence when all needs are met. Each sound carries with it a state, and by occupying that state through inner hearing, you claim it as your own. When you make this nightly listening a way of life, you step into the creative power that has always been yours. You no longer wait for chance or depend on circumstance. You know that imagination is the source, and by impressing the subconscious with sounds of fulfillment, you write the script that the world must perform. Creation is already finished. You only receive, for every possibility that you can ever desire or imagine exists now in the eternal present. Nothing is to be created. Nothing is to be invented, for all that shall ever be has already been established in the invisible realm of imagination. The task is not to struggle, not to force, not to anxiously wonder how desires will come, but to accept that they already are. To live from this truth is to free yourself from the tyranny of time and effort, and to enter into the ease of receiving what is eternally yours. When you hear the phrase creation is finished, you may ask, how can that be, when I do not yet see what I desire? The answer lies in understanding that the world of form lags behind the world of imagination. Imagination is the seed, and what you imagine with feeling is already accomplished in the unseen. Time merely serves as the medium by which that invisible seed blossoms into visible experience. To declare creation finished is to recognize that what you seek is not to come into being but to be revealed. Receiving is not passive indifference but active assumption. It is the deliberate choice to occupy the state of the wish fulfilled and to live as though it were already true. When you assume, you step into the finished creation, aligning yourself with that dimension of reality where your desire is already accomplished. Every possibility exists, yet the one you experience is the one you consent to through assumption. To assume poverty is to step into the finished state of lack, and the world reflects it. To assume wealth is to step into the finished state of abundance, and life echoes that choice. The outer world is only the stage on which your inner choices are played out. You are not creating wealth, health, or love. You are selecting from the infinite gallery of finished realities that already exist. Just as a radio does not create the broadcast but tunes into the frequency, so too do you not create desires but tune your consciousness to the state where they are already fulfilled. By doing so, you receive. Many live as beggars in a kingdom of abundance because they believe creation is incomplete, that they must strive endlessly to bring about what is already finished. They place their faith in effort, forgetting that effort without inner alignment produces struggle without fulfillment. When you know creation is finished, you cease chasing shadows and instead turn inward to assume the end. This inner acceptance draws the bridge of incidence by which your desire is revealed in the world of senses. Receiving requires faith, for the outer senses will often deny the truth of the inner assumption. Appearances may say it is impossible, that the desire is far away, but faith insists that what is unseen is more real than what is seen. Faith rests in the knowledge that creation is done, and in that rest, the subconscious is impressed with the certainty of fulfillment. Once impressed, it must externalize, for the subconscious is the faithful servant that gives form to the unseen conviction. Every prayer you make is already answered, not in some distant future, but in the eternal now. To pray correctly is not to beg or plead, but to assume the reality of the answered state. You pray by hearing the sounds of fulfillment, by feeling the joy of accomplishment, by seeing in imagination what the world will eventually reflect. To pray is to receive in imagination, knowing that creation is finished, and then to persist in that inner knowing until it becomes outer fact. The beauty of this truth is that it places the power entirely within you. You are not a victim of chance or fate, for nothing comes to you except what you have inwardly accepted. You are the chooser of states, the receiver of what already exists. By selecting wisely, by assuming nobly, by persisting faithfully, you bring forth from the finished creation the life that aligns with your highest vision. Creation waits not for your labor, but for your acceptance. And the moment you assume the end, you have already received. Wealth exists now, align with it inwardly, for abundance is not a distant dream to be earned someday, but a present reality waiting for your recognition. The mind, when clouded by lack, projects poverty into the world and sees evidence everywhere to confirm it. Yet the truth remains unshaken. Wealth is already here. It is not hidden, nor is it reserved for a select few. It exists in the eternal now, accessible to anyone who dares to assume its presence within. The challenge is not to create wealth, but to tune yourself to the state where it already is. Every desire for financial freedom, comfort, and prosperity is not a call to chase something beyond reach, but an invitation to awaken to what has always been yours in the unseen. To align inwardly with wealth means to carry yourself in consciousness as one who is already provided for, already supplied, already living in the flow of abundance. You need not wait for circumstances to shift before adopting this state. In fact, circumstances shift only after the state has been assumed. If you continue to affirm poverty through fear, worry, and complaint, you perpetuate the very state you wish to escape. But the moment you deliberately assume wealth inwardly, you set in motion a chain of events that must culminate in the reflection of that assumption. Wealth is not a number in a bank account, nor is it stacks of currency stored away. It is a state of being, a consciousness of supply, a recognition that the universe is infinite and that your portion is secure. One who holds little outwardly but assumes wealth inwardly will soon see life reorganized to reflect abundance. One who holds much outwardly but clings inwardly to fear of loss will eventually experience the decline he has imagined. The root is always within, never without. To align with wealth inwardly, you must hear, see, and feel from the position of one who already possesses it. Hear the sounds of congratulations from loved ones who rejoice in your prosperity. See yourself moving easily through life, every need met, every desire within reach. Feel the relief, the gratitude, the confidence of financial freedom. By rehearsing these imaginal acts nightly, you saturate the subconscious with the conviction of wealth. The subconscious, indifferent to whether it is true or false, accepts what you impress upon it and brings forth conditions to support it. The outer world is always an echo of inner assumptions. If you believe money is scarce, opportunities will seem to dry up. If you believe money flows easily, doors will open in unexpected places. The law is simple but exact. You do not get what you want, you get what you assume. To want wealth without assuming it is to remain in the state of lack. To assume wealth, even when the evidence contradicts, is to step into the finished reality where wealth already exists. Persistence is required, for appearances often resist the new state at first. Old beliefs may whisper doubts, circumstances may seem unchanged, but if you hold fast to the inner conviction, the outer must conform. The bridge of incidents will appear. Unexpected meetings, timely opportunities, sudden insights that carry you naturally to the expression of your assumption. The process is effortless once the state is firmly occupied, for the state itself draws the experiences that match it. Wealth is not something you strive for, but something you tune into. Just as a radio does not create the broadcast, but aligns with the frequency, so too do you not create abundance, but align with the state where it already is. Every possibility exists now, but your experience is determined by the state you occupy. Align with lack, and you live in lack. Align with wealth, and you live in wealth. To practice alignment, shift your inner conversations. Instead of saying, "I cannot afford this," imagine yourself easily paying, joyfully giving, confidently receiving. Replace thoughts of limitation with the certainty of supply. When you fall asleep at night, let your last impressions be those of abundance already enjoyed. By making this your nightly practice, you impress wealth upon the subconscious, and in time, the outer world reflects it with mathematical precision. Wealth exists now, not tomorrow, not after years of toil, but in this very moment. The question is whether you will claim it inwardly. To align with it is to live from the end, to accept its presence even when the senses deny it, to persist in the inner knowing until the outer world echoes it back. Wealth is a state, a vibration, a consciousness, and by dwelling in it, you call forth the evidence that it has been yours all along. The choice is ever yours, for the law cannot fail, and the world must reflect the wealth you dare to assume within. No action is needed beyond assumption, for assumption is the creative act that sets in motion the unseen forces of life, which bring your desire into expression. The world has been conditioned to believe that effort, struggle, and ceaseless labor are the keys to achievement, yet beneath this illusion lies a greater truth. The cause of all manifestation is consciousness, and what you assume to be true within inevitably hardens into fact without. To assume is to accept a state as real, to feel it as though it were already accomplished. And this act alone is sufficient to summon into being the experiences that align with it. Action in itself is not the cause of creation, but the effect of the assumption you carry. You move, speak, and decide according to the state you occupy, and that state determines the quality of your actions. If you assume failure, every action you take will unconsciously align with that state and produce outcomes that echo failure. If you assume success, the actions you are led to take will be harmonious with success and inevitably yield it. The difference is not in the action but in the assumption from which the action springs. Therefore, the true work is not in striving outwardly but in assuming inwardly, for the state itself organizes the events, people, and circumstances required for its fulfillment. When you hear that no action is needed beyond assumption, it does not mean you will sit motionless and watch life pass by. Rather, it means that all necessary action will flow naturally and effortlessly from the state you have already claimed. You need not worry about what step to take, when to take it, or how events will unfold. The moment you assume the end, the bridge of incidents is set into motion. This bridge may include actions you take, opportunities that appear, or decisions you make, yet every detail arises without strain, for the path is built by the assumption itself. Consider the dreamer who, in sleep, lives fully in the scenes imagined. Within the dream, he acts, speaks, and moves as though it were reality, and upon waking he realizes it was all born of the imagination. Life operates in the same way. Your waking world is but the crystallized dream of your assumptions. Just as no effort is required to conjure experiences in a dream, so no effort is needed to bring forth desires in waking life once the assumption is firmly held. The subconscious accepts the assumption and brings it forth in its own perfect way, in its own perfect time. The struggle of humanity comes from clinging to appearances and doubting the unseen. Men and women rush to action out of fear, believing that without their constant effort, nothing will change. Yet action without assumption is labor in vain, for it attempts to alter effects without touching the cause. True power belongs to the one who turns inward, assumes the wish fulfilled, and rests in the knowledge that the world must conform. It is not passivity but mastery, for assumption is the highest form of action, the action of consciousness itself. This truth also reveals why two people may take the same outward steps yet achieve entirely different results. One may toil endlessly without reward, while another glides with ease to success. The difference lies not in the action, but in the inner state behind it. The first acts from doubt, from fear, from the assumption of lack, and so even his greatest effort cannot rise above the state he occupies. The second acts from certainty, from faith, from the assumption of abundance, and so even his smallest effort is magnified by the power of the state. It is not the effort that produces results, but the assumption that directs the outcome. To live by this principle is to shift the focus of your energy. Instead of worrying about what to do, you concern yourself only with what to assume. You choose the state of the wish fulfilled, you feel it real. You hear the sounds of completion, you see the vision of accomplishment, and then you let life itself arrange the details. You will find yourself moved to act, but the action will be effortless, natural, and free from strain, as though guided by an unseen hand. You will look back and marvel at the perfection of the sequence, realizing that every step was inevitable once the assumption was made. No action is needed beyond assumption, because assumption itself is the seed of creation, and once planted, it cannot fail to grow. The soil is your subconscious mind, and it accepts without resistance the seeds impressed upon it. To assume wealth is to plant wealth. To assume love is to plant love. To assume success is to plant success. The subconscious then brings forth these seeds into visible form, using whatever channels are necessary, often in ways you could never predict. Your task is not to force the growth, but to persist in the assumption until it feels natural. For once it is natural within, it must appear without. The great mistake is to abandon the assumption when outer appearances seem unchanged. Many give up too soon, rushing back to action in desperation, and in doing so, they uproot the seed before it bears fruit. But those who persist, who continue to assume despite appearances, discover that life always bends to the inner conviction. Time is only the delay between planting and harvest, and patience is the proof of faith. To embody this truth is to live in freedom, for you no longer chase after conditions or exhaust yourself in endless effort. You know that the cause is within, and that assumption alone is the key. By dwelling nightly in the state of the wish fulfilled, by hearing the inner conversations of success, by feeling the reality of your desire now, you perform the only action necessary. All else is the inevitable outworking of that inner act, and life itself becomes the servant of your assumption. Listening to the end is the key to winning, for to listen inwardly as though your desire were already accomplished is to step into the reality where it exists. The end is not a distant possibility, but a present reality in imagination, and when you dare to hear it with conviction, you impress it upon the subconscious mind. The subconscious does not question, doubt, or reason. It accepts the feeling carried by your imaginal act and faithfully produces its likeness in the outer world. To listen to the end is therefore the highest form of prayer, the secret act of creation, the invisible cause behind every visible effect. Most people live listening only to the evidence of their senses. They hear words of limitation, they hear voices of doubt, they hear the noise of failure echoing in the outer world, and then they accept these sounds as final. But the one who understands the law turns away from appearances and chooses instead to hear the sounds of fulfillment. He listens in the silence of imagination to the voices that would be present if his desire were already achieved. He hears the tone of congratulations, the laughter of celebration, the calm assurance of completion, and in hearing these, he occupies the end. Listening to the end is not wishful thinking or idle fantasy. It is a deliberate act of assumption, repeated until it feels natural. The mind cannot hold two contradictory states at once, so when you listen consistently to the end, you drown out the noise of doubt and establish the conviction of success. Over time, this conviction becomes so strong that the outer world has no choice but to echo it. For the world is only a mirror, and it reflects the inner sound you have chosen to hear. To listen to the end requires imagination and persistence. It requires shutting your ears to what seems to be and opening them to what must be, if your desire were true. This is why Neville spoke of hearing congratulations as though they were already spoken, of listening nightly to the tones of victory. For by rehearsing these sounds in the stillness before sleep, you impress the subconscious with the reality of the fulfilled desire. Once impressed, the subconscious sets into motion the bridge of incidents that will carry you to the realization of what you have already heard within. The bridge of incidents is not something you plan consciously. It arises naturally, as though guided by an unseen hand. People, circumstances, and opportunities align to bring about what you have already accepted. You may find yourself moved to act, but the action will be effortless and in harmony with the end you have assumed. This is why listening to the end is the key. It does not require you to know how things will unfold, only to accept that they already have. The how is the work of the subconscious. Your work is only to listen until the end feels real. Consider how a play is performed. The actors rehearse the final scene again and again until it is known by heart. The audience eventually sees only the finished performance. Yet that end was established long before the curtain rose. So it is with life. When you listen to the end, you rehearse it inwardly until it becomes natural, and then the world performs it for you. The ending is secure, and all the scenes in between simply lead you there. Many fail because they listen only to the middle. They rehearse the obstacles, the delays, the doubts, the endless questions of how. By listening to the middle, they perpetuate the struggle. But when you listen to the end, you bypass the middle altogether. You rest in the assurance that it is already done, and in this rest, the subconscious organizes the middle for you. The middle is not your concern, the end is. And when the end is secured, the middle must follow. Listening to the end also dissolves fear. Fear arises only when you doubt the outcome, when you imagine loss, rejection, or failure. But when you have already heard the sounds of victory, fear loses its hold. You cannot fear what you know is already accomplished. The inner assurance of hearing the end gives you peace, and this peace is the surest sign that the assumption has taken root. From this state, you move through life with quiet confidence, knowing that nothing can prevent the fulfillment of what you have already heard. To practice this art, choose a simple scene that implies the fulfillment of your desire. If your aim is financial freedom, imagine a trusted friend saying to you, "I'm so glad you're finally free." If your aim is love, imagine hearing your partner's voice calling you with affection. If your aim is health, hear the doctor saying, "You are completely well." The words themselves are not important. It is the feeling behind them. Listen until the tone, the rhythm, the emotion of the words feel real, until you can no longer tell the difference between imagination and memory. Do this nightly, especially as you drift into sleep, for in that drowsy state the subconscious is most receptive. Fall asleep, hearing the end, and you plant the seed deeply. By repeating this act with persistence, the subconscious is saturated, and what has been planted must eventually bear fruit. You need not strain or force. The key is to listen naturally, lightly, joyfully, as though the end were already true. The law is exact and unfailing. Whatever you hear inwardly with conviction becomes your outer reality. If you listen to lack, you will live in lack. If you listen to abundance, you will live in abundance. If you listen to failure, you will fail. If you listen to victory, you will succeed. The world is but the echo chamber of your inner hearing, and it cannot return to you anything but what you have first heard within. Listening to the end is therefore the key to winning, because it places you immediately in the state of fulfillment. You no longer strive, hope, or long. You accept. And in that acceptance, you align yourself with the finished creation where your desire already exists. Time may seem to separate you from it, but time is only the unfolding of what you have already received. The moment you listen to the end, you have already won, and all that remains is the revelation of that truth in your outer world. To live this way is to live as the master of your fate, for you know that nothing outside can determine your experience. You are the listener, the one who chooses what voices to entertain, what sounds to rehearse, what end to accept. And by your inner hearing, you create the symphony of your life. Choose then to listen only to the end you desire, persist until it feels real, and watch as the world, faithful to its role as echo, returns to you the victory you have already heard in the silence of imagination.